You know, so many people in our incredible Cogir communities, they love to write. It's a great way to document life and also to have a special outlet. Well, today, you're going to love meeting Tosca Lenci on Napa Road. Tosca Lenci loves to write, and she made a career at it. Plus, she's interesting. Cogir on Napa Road in Napa Valley. Tosca, you mentioned that you were married for 25 years.
Yes.
Divorced for 12.
Yes.
And then married back to the same person for...
The father of my children, yes.
For how many years after you were divorced?
18.
So 25 years married, 12 years divorced, and then 18 with the same guy again?
Yes.
Okay, that's a love story. Somewhere in there is a love story.
Well, yes, it is a love story because I was 18. I had graduated from high school at 16. Managed to get a year and a half get into state college, and my first writing course at 18. Everything I worked for, and sitting in front of me was this gentleman that was going to be going for a PhD in philosophy. And by the time I was 19, we were married and we were about to become parents. And he was in graduate school. And I went to work when our first daughter was 2 weeks old. We had a typical student marriage, you name it. Yes.
You mentioned state college. Where was that at?
San Francisco State.
Okay.
I guess it's been renamed university. I don't know.
Because you're at Napa Valley now. You're at Napa Road, Cogir Napa Road. So have you stayed in that area your entire life?
My husband and I moved to Sonoma at about 1990. And we lived here. We had a house in Boy Springs. So, well, that's a painting of the back garden that I left. Oh. It was a great little house. It was built by a man who had escaped the Nazis and worked his way as a laborer all the way across, the continent there, the ocean, and to Sonoma, and worked as a laborer. But before when he retired, about that time, he was able to actually build a home himself.
When you say build a home, do you mean
he
with his hands?
It. He was, so it's 620 Calle del Monte in Sonoma. And it's a beautiful little house. I mean, everything about it was perfect. And I was transforming it. It had 4 of its own oak trees. I had even put one of those strap swings in the backyard under the oak over there.
And Sonoma is so beautiful. Oh,
yeah, it was great. We were lucky.
And you mentioned that at 2 weeks after becoming a mother, very young at 19, you were working.
Oh, yes, but I was able to use the word art, which I had learned or been developed to want to do. I worked at all levels of government. At my website, where I've collected works since I retired, there's a copy of my resume, but some of the jobs were all interesting. I really felt, didn't realize how fortunate I was, because what I received was a perfect lesson in the economics of our environmental and our society. I worked for Public Works, for example, and learned about the different services and how the city exists, how the traffic lights work and all of that.
How did you craft your talent for writing?
I just learned from the bottom up. I had when I took that first writing course where I met my husband to be, um, I wrote my first short story, and it was the first that the professor read to the class, you know. So that was gratifying. And then in high school, in my senior year, I won an award in the San Francisco Press and Union League Club contest for a story I'd written. So I had some encouragement like that, but I didn't really start. Although wrote in my mind all the time. I remember the first line I can remember my mother had sent me to get something she needed at the store. And I was probably about 10. And the line goes something like, she was walking along Union Street in her sturdy brown Oxfords. When up ahead, she noticed a priest, fully dressed, looking transfixed before a store window, and she couldn't wait to get to the corner to see what the priest was looking at, what caught her attention. And that was actually what was happening to me. I started describing myself and things around me in the third person.
I
And
love
that,
that because they say that a good writer is able to bring all senses to the reader.
yes, but there have been writers that I have adored, the ones that could make you feel something in a moment with the fewest words, with, you know, just not, I remember Conrad, um, a line, but this was about what the writer is trying to do, and his line is something like, "I want to make you see," but see, he meant more than just looking.
Yep.
Um, he meant observing, and it was Sherlock Holmes who said to Watson something about there was a difference between seeing and observing. Seeing is just you look your eyes, I see the sink, whatever, but or a person, there's so and so, right? But when I observe the person um, and their demeanor and how I observed them yesterday, for example, there's that in between thought, you know.
That's so interesting.
But
Along
I'm
those
also
lines, a lot of people say there's a difference between just living and being alive.
oh
There's a
very
difference.
very well put. Just as a culmination of that thought that I've had.
What do you love writing about the most?
There are three subjects that I liked writing about the most. The first is I guess I'd have to say the cosmos, because it started with perception, but in order to write about perception, I had to go into the materiality of perception. And so I enjoyed that. That was probably the second subject that I worked on. And put together something called A Child's Book of Light. And that took care of that subject. Not that I finished it for the universe, but for myself, it was the best I could take it. And then the second subject was the history of religions. And I got very strong feelings I have about how there is that atmosphere about religion, the relations between groups or nations, and there's always that supposed religious base, right? And
It's great. Religion has created more friends and more wars than anything in history.
yeah, and we're there again. It almost makes me feel hopeless because my husband did teach philosophy at Cal,
That's right.
and I stayed out of philosophy. When I realized I was going to marry him, I decided I would check philosophy out. And I remember finding some philosopher whose name I don't remember and reading the first 3 paragraphs and thinking, forget it. So, but one thing, once we had this difference discussion as to our existence, now I then wholeheartedly believed in evolution and in materiality and in our brains, and that our brains could evolve and eventually our collective consciousness would get beyond stupidities. Whereas he said, for goodness sake, no. He said, look at, quote, gods, whatever you want to say, animal realm here. We're the highest of the animal realm on earth. And yes, we can teach a monkey to hit some typewriter keys, but we're not going to give a monkey the consciousness that we have to reason. And we're going to always act according to our instincts. So I've been miserable about what's happening in the world, because every once in a while I look up and say, although I don't believe there is an existence in heaven or anything, I believe our materiality gets reused over and over, but disseminated, But lately I've been saying, God, Ron, I'm afraid you were right, the way things are going. I don't want to hear about it.
Well, Tosca, as smart as you are, and being married to a philosopher, I'm sure that you had some interesting conversations. Hey, what advice would you give to a young author?
The first thought that occurs is to get involved in the business of it right away. Learn about it, because I learned backwards how a book is done. If I had gone to classes about it, I would have realized when I started working on, for example, the history of the daughters, that yes, you're going to stream a lot and you're going to use those streamings. You're going to research, you're going to do that, and you're going to have all of this, and you're going to need to combine it. So then you have to go through through the research first and separate it out into the chapters. Things
I see.
Okay, so now you've got some chapters. Then you go to the streamings and you translate all of that. But in the process, it's very time consuming.
Yes.
With this book, I threw away about 2/3. I sat in front of the fireplace because the streamings are your thoughts you've got to get rid of, right? But you can maybe sum up 2 pages in one line.
But to write the book chronologically is important. Tosca, tell us about Cogir in Napa Valley, Cogir Napa Road.
I became acquainted with Cogir when my sister-in-law arrived at a stage where I had been maintaining her in their family home. It's what had been the family home in San Rafael, but she needed assisted care. And so I had come and visited Cogir, and I was quite impressed. I've forgotten what function it was, but it was one that was open to people's relatives, to the community.
Right.
And it was held, and in the dining room, all the tables were set up, and I sat next to a very intelligent resident and really enjoyed it. And that was a real important element for me when it came time and then I came here later, when I started just thinking about myself, and I came to a couple of things. I remember there was a woman who they would have political discussions in the media room, and it was a very intelligent lady that was kind of running the things for everyone.
Oh, that's perfect for you because you're so smart that you need that
Oh,
food. You need
beautiful.
that food for your mind. You do. And those kind of discussions to have within the Cogir community are
It
beautiful.
was very important.
Cogir makes friends. That's beautiful.
And I'm, now that then I had incidents material physically happen, and I know when it came to the point after rehab that I was to be with assisted living. And I remember I made the decision very quickly, and my older daughter, I know she said to me, "Are you sure? You don't want to take more time?" And I said, "No." So I've been here 2 years, which is very, very difficult even now for me to believe, because no matter, I mean, the staff is remarkable. They all must have a calling to this because, well, of course, longevity became a study for me. And I've got a book supposedly in notes and research this thick that I don't think, because the secretary of me has decided to totally
Oh, I
retire.
imagine. That's who you are, Tosca, and you are definitely a jewel in the Cogir community. Tosca, how many kids did you end up having?
2 daughters.
Two daughters, and they have to feel good about where mom is right now. And Tosca,
They do. Well, my older daughter is 69, and she's a retired attorney now. And the younger daughter is 62.
I think it's wonderful that you still have a relationship with your daughters. And Tosca, you look wonderful. You're smart as a whip. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much
Well,
for taking the time.
if I'm smart, you must be equally smart to understand me, right?
Thank you for taking the time. Hugs to you and the very best to you.
Thank you, Dave, so much. You've been the perfect interviewer.